What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So, in this age of heightened insensitivity and, people having the compassion of a cockroach, it reminds me of how today's fans don't really see sometimes athletes and players as people. They think because these guys make a lot of money that justifies their criticism. But look, at the end of the day, sports is still just sports. It's not life or death, even though sometimes you use that type of rhetoric. But in the grand scheme of things, sports is supposed to be a blissful distraction from the stresses of life. When a guy gets a game-winning hit or hits a game-winning shot or catches the game-winning touchdown, we cheer, and it's a positive thing, for that team, us, and the players who were involved in that situation. There's always a flip side. That's the losing side. And yes, the team, the players, the organization, the fans are disappointed. But there's a limit, man. Sometimes fans can go too far with their criticism, and it can lead to a downward spiral that can result in tragedy. And it was 32 years ago that we saw that downward spiral in former Major League pitcher Donnie Moore. Now, in 1985, Donnie Moore, who was never one of was never a guy you would consider a premier pitcher, but he had the best season of his career at that time. And the owner of the then, I believe they were still the California Angels at that time, Gene Autry, uh, rewarded Moore with a contract. I think it was 3 year, $3.5 million. It was good money at that time. So he brought, with that contract, he brought a house for his wife and his two children. I believe it was two children. No, I think it was three children. Three children. I think it was one girl and two boys. Going into the '86 season, you think would have been a happy time. He just got this new contract. Um, the team was doing very well that year. You think it would be a great time in Donnie Moore's life, but unfortunately, it wasn't. Going into the '85 season, going from the '85 to the '86 season, excuse me, he had been dealing with injuries, and in particular, an injury that was undiagnosed at the time. He was suffering from back pain, and nerve pain, but he had a bone spur in his spine. He didn't know what was going on, so back in those days, doctors would give you, painkillers or give you, injections to numb the pain, and that's pretty much how they survived seasons. The 1986 season was a very successful season for the California Angels, and they made it all the way to the ALCS against the Boston Red Sox. And it's interesting because this Boston Red Sox team would go on to have their heartbreak during the World Series against the New York Mets. But in the '86 ALCS, it would be the California Angels' turn for heartbreak, and unfortunately, in particular, Donnie Moore. Now, the Angels took a 3-1 series lead, and late in the game, in game 5, it looked like the Angels had the game won. And but certain events happened where I think they were up 5-2 late in the game. It looked like they had the game won. Then I think it was it Don Baylor? Somebody hit a home run for the Red Sox, cut it to 5-4. And then Donnie Moore, who was in effect their closer at the time, even though he wasn't a natural closer, but he was the closer. That was his role that year. Was facing Dave Henderson, who had been having a terrible series. So that was the decision that Gene Marsh, I believe is his name, the Angels manager, made to put Donnie Moore out there, even though Moore had been somewhat inconsistent in this role because of injuries. Now, what gets forgotten is that Donnie Moore nearly struck out Dave Henderson at that at bat, but Donnie Moore made a mistake with one particular pitch, partially because of his injury. It was off, and Dave Henderson hit a home run into the stands, giving the Red Sox the lead. Now, what gets forgotten is that the Angels were able to come back and tie the game, but ultimately, I think it was in extra innings, they lost that game. And then they lost game six, and then lost game seven. And most people that observed Donnie Moore said that that moment changed, it altered him. He forever blamed himself for that loss. He lost his confidence as a pitcher, which is why I say there's always a psychological aspect of this of sports that people don't really respect, the confidence factor. And ultimately, I think by 1988 or 89, Donnie Moore was out of baseball, excuse me, and he had to live with the, in his mind, the shame of being the reason why the Angels didn't make it to the World Series. Um, Fans berated him. Fans spat at him. Uh, you know, drunken fans would say just horrible things to him. And many people said that this led to a mental decline in him. And ultimately, it led to the tragedy that occurred on July 18th of 1989, where he got into an argument with his wife, and in front of his three children, shot her three times. Her daughter, who I think was 17 or 18 years old at the time, was able to frantically drive her to the hospital, save her life, resulting in saving her life. But she had to undergo years of therapy, physical and mental. Donnie Moore then, in front of his two uh, sons, shot himself in the head, killing himself. Now, how much of this was a mental disorder, not related to sports, we don't know. But some of this had to do with baseball. Some of it. There were financial woes. He no longer was a player. He didn't have money coming in. The home was open for, I think the home had been foreclosed and was going to be sold. Stress, of course. But people say that Donnie Moore was driven insane ultimately because of that moment in 1986 and the subsequent criticism, labeling of him and fans. It's also worth noting that Donnie Moore, when you really look at it, wasn't really the real true blame for that. But because some people even speculate because of his race, it did add to it. So I make this video because of one reason. That's because I sometimes see on social media way too much. I know this sounds strange coming from me, cyberbullying. Yeah, I talk shit about people. I do. But you'll never hear me pile on someone when they're down. I will never do that. We got way too much of that going on, especially when it comes to sports. We become heartless, cretinous savages sometimes when it comes to the way we react to sports personalities or athletes, I should say, when they strike out, when they miss a shot. You know, Joe Harris had a bad series, for instance. He doesn't deserve to get. Yeah, we might joke around and say that, but he doesn't deserve to get uh, pummeled and beaten because he missed shots. It's funny we have more energy for when athletes miss a putt, a chipper, or 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 miss a serve in tennis, or you know, or don't get a catch in football. We have more energy for that than these cretins walking around who are doing all types of what to our citizens. You know what I'm saying? Misplaced energy. But anyway, that's the point of this video, man. Tell me what you guys think.